Seko Shamte, karibu.
Asante. Asante.
Thank you for being with me here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored, I'm excited. Thank you so much, Clarissa, honestly.
It's a real honor to have you here. And particularly because it's also a very busy and hectic life. But before we start, I think, please, could you shortly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Seko Shamte. I am Tanzanian. I'm a woman. I'm a filmmaker. And my latest film is called Binti that I'm here to present at Cinema Africa. And I'm extremely, extremely excited for everyone to check it out.
I think we are even more excited and really happy to have you. The film really caught my attention, not because I just saw it at the Zanzibar Film Festival being listed. I was not there.
Yeah.
And then I read about it, and I read about the director, and I read about the crew. And but yeah, tell us about the film.
Yeah.
Tell us the story.
So it's a story about 4 women. From different socioeconomic backgrounds in contemporary modern-day Dar es Salaam. And they're all going through different stages and different, what's the word I'm looking for? Each of them have something that they need to overcome. And, towards the end or at the end, we see how they're interconnected. So this story is very close to my heart. This is actually the first time as a filmmaker that I've trained my eye on women. Mm-hmm. And I was actually thinking about that when I was thinking whether or not to pursue this. I had never really done anything on contemporary women. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of my earlier work was very male-centric. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't realized that I was actually part of the problem here. In terms of myself as a woman and the stories that I valued. So doing this it was amazing. It was my co-producers were 2 sisters, Alinda and Angela Ruhinda. They're also Tanzanian. So it was really about us 3 women coming together to tell this story about 4 women. And first of all, it was the easiest set that I've ever worked on. Mm-hmm. It was the smoothest collaboration that I've ever had. And I think it's just, amongst, a lot of times when you picture film sets or even the pre-production process, there's a lot of yelling, a lot of, everyone trying to get their own way because there are a lot of egos involved. And not to say that women don't have egos, we do. But I think for us 3 women working together, mm-hmm. it flowed. Mm-hmm. It flowed. Mm-hmm. And, even on the day when we premiered, we were really talking about how easy it is to work together and how in many times women are discouraged from working together. They'd be like, oh, women are complicated, they're difficult to work with, but it was really just one of the best experiences of my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did
you deliberately team up only with women for that film? Because you could have also, just imagine, you could have also told like a very female-centered story or stories, yeah. But not necessarily kind of translating this as well into a philosophy of how your crew should look like.
True. This is true. Mm. But I think it wasn't really deliberate because Angela and I, we had, she lived in LA for a really long time and she was working out there. And then she was like, I want to come home. And I'm like, well, I'm already home. And she was like, we got to work on something together. So we collaborated on this very, very short film that she wrote. It was about 7 minutes long called Midnight. And then when we saw how well we worked together, we were like, okay, now we got to take it to the feature level after this. So then we were like, we work well together. Mm-hmm. So initially it wasn't really, it was a happy coincidence that we ended up working. And then, she brought in her sister as well as a producing partner. So at the end it became a happy coincidence that 3 women were working together. Mm-hmm. It was not initially by design. Right. Okay. But afterwards we're like, yeah, that was awesome. Uh-huh. And we'll do it again.
Perfect. So this lucky coincidence was really a lucky coincidence. Yes. Then. And you said yourself, you kind of, so to say, you were part of the problem, as you said, but you also realized that it was so important to tell these stories. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a bit how the film has changed perceptions? Probably your own, also in the process of making it, but also if we look at the wider reception?
Yeah. For me, it was just very transformative. Just like I said, I'd never really worked in that capacity, and also working, when we were writing, when Angela and I were writing as well, because we were in the writer. I'd never worked with a writing partner before.
Mm-hmm.
I usually shoot the things I write alone. So that was also awesome, because then I think we really bonded, because as we were writing each storyline, we were really talking to each other and really being vulnerable and really opening up. And I think we got to see different sides of each other that under normal circumstances as friends we maybe would not have had an occasion to have that kind of vulnerability. And so that immediately started transforming me, because I'm a pretty closed off person, actually. I mean, I talk a lot, but if you listen closely, like, I'm not really talking that much about like my interior world.
I'm not going to try to intrude into the
interior world. So it was beautiful, because then I was able to really start, opening up to my friends and opening up to people. And then, after we would have a writing session, I'll talk to my best friends and my close friends, and be like, oh, we were talking about this. And then they would also be like, oh, this happened to me. So it really also started amongst ourselves.
Right.
Like, it was a good starting point for having these vulnerable conversations. And then when we premiered, actually, usually when the film is playing, or any of my films are playing, I never sit inside. I just get too nervous. I'm like, oh, will the jokes land? Will they understand what I meant by that? So I get into my head a lot. So it's better for me to just sit outside, and then when it's done, I go back inside. So I was sitting outside, and I'm nervously waiting. And of course, because I also edited the first and final cut of the film, I kind of know every single nuance, it was somewhere around, I remember, about 28 minutes, and I knew exactly what was happening when I saw this woman come out of the theater, and I was like, oh my God, are people leaving? Is it that? What's happening here? But she came out, and she just started shaking and crying.
It was her own story?
Yeah.
All right.
At first I was like, what's happening? And then she saw me, and she came over, and she gave me a deep hug. Wow. And she cried and cried. And I remember it was the premiere, and so we were all dressed up in my dress and her mascara and her foundation, and it was all, it was such a human moment right there. And I feel a little teary-eyed right now talking about it, because, again, this is someone that I've known, and, she came to the premiere. In Tanzania, she's this exceptional model and socialite. And again, I never knew that there was so much that was going on in her life, and this kind of broke that open. And again, we ended up for 15 minutes having this very deep conversation, which we'd never had, and I've known her for 20 years. So then she went back inside, and that's when I was like, okay, I think Tanzanian women are really, really responding to this. And then afterwards, when we did the Q&A, and a lot of women came up to me, Tanzanian women, and they were like, thank you for representing us. And some of the men as well came up to me, and I remember one telling me, my mom went through, what this character went through, and, as a teenager in my early 20s, I never really paid attention. I was never really, I never really understood what it meant to be in her shoes until this moment, And so, I've been having a lot of, and even when it was in theaters in Tanzania, people would DM me these really, really long messages. And sometimes I would be a little, because, I'm a filmmaker, I'm not a therapist, but I would have these long, and I'll just kind of read them, and I'll be like, I'm not sure what to, how do I even reply to this?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that also means that there was a deep kind of lack. And it probably then women really found that, okay, there is a space, there is a kind of a platform created for us.
Yes.
And for all our, if I look at the film, also our traumas.
Yeah, and that was important. And like I said, a lot of my earlier films, they were well researched, like quite cerebral, quite masculine, and people would leave and they'd be like, oh, I really liked it, but there was never a situation where we were having this type of bond with a creator in the audience. I've never had that before until this film.
right before the interview, we actually talked about how very often, well, not only in Tanzania, I think it's probably a global phenomenon, the reception of films, or even the way, I think it's the reception and the consumption is so also gendered, that in a sense, men don't even consider, as you told us before, men don't even consider a film made by women.
Absolutely.
Or music produced by women. And what about, has that changed with Binti? Or what were sort of male reactions to the film?
The male reactions were interesting. A lot of them, I mean, the ones that, I spoke to really liked it. And for a lot of them, they were like, well, is this what we've been doing? I wasn't aware, I think, when you, as a human being, you can justify every single action that you make, right? Knowing your past, knowing your traumas, knowing the baggage that you carry. Sometimes you have to get outside of yourself and see something. That's when you're like, okay, but that's actually wrong. And so a lot of conversations that I had with men about the film were along those lines, where they're reconsidering some of their approaches towards relationships, towards their children. And I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
Although even if I look at the film, also the male roles in there are very different. So you also leave men, I think, a spectrum.
Yes.
To discuss and to identify with, or also to reject, probably.
And it's like I was very cognizant. I mean, I don't want to make a film that it's bashing men. So of course I had to really balance the characters as well. I wanted one to be one extreme, one to be the other as well. To balance it out, that it's not a blanket. But they're good and not so good, and to give men fair play, so they don't walk away thinking we've been attacked. No, nobody have their guard up and be like, this feminist movement is attacking me. It's like, no one is attacking you. That's why I wanted to make sure that the characters were also really balanced.
I mean, I think the film shows as well how they can also be victims of this patriarchal society.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's really the beauty of it.
Absolutely.
Well, Tanzania, compared, for instance, to a country like Nigeria, is not too much known for film production. Of course, there is lots of, so to say, popular film production. And I think we all know the series, so to say, that we all watch. And lots of people from different classes also watch. But the feature film is really a rare thing still. Can you say something about that? How is it as a film director in this in this kind of context?
No, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. I think that, for those of us who've been at this, I mean, I've been at this since really my first feature I did in 2015, but my first kind of big film production I did in 2011. So it's been 10 years in for me. And so for those of us who really started, we're finally starting to see something come of it. Only a few years ago did we start finally going to the festivals. So for us, we're going through a lot of firsts right now. And now, because on the continent, the platforms are there, Amazon Prime is there, Netflix is doing really good work right now. So it's becoming a more viable profession, I would say. Because I mean, even for me, telling my parents, I want to be a filmmaker, they were like,
good joke.
How are you going to make a living? Are you going to be able to look after yourself? But my mom, who's an amazing writer, 10, 50, 100 times better than I'll ever be, she really encouraged it. My dad's an engineer, and he was just kind of like, doesn't seem very practical to me. But, they were supportive. And so now I think because our class are starting to break through, I think that for the people who are now coming, I think we'll see a lot more women filmmakers, a lot more Tanzanian filmmakers, as now we're finding new avenues to actually make it viable.
So what's the next project for you then?
Oh my gosh, I've written 4 scripts, I think, in the past 4 months. Yeah, I've been in a productive phase. I've been in a productive phase. But the one that I like the most is the one that I wrote last week when I was flying home from Nigeria to Dar es Salaam. I really like that. I know that I really want to do a mini series on our first president, Nyerere, and his wife, and do a deep dive, deep character study over 4 or 5 episodes. Hoping to do that if I can with a platform. Because I feel like Nyerere is really lost in the Mandelas and the Nkrumahs, like nobody, Nyerere be like, maybe Africans mostly know Nyerere, but even that's kind of starting to fade. And I think his legacy is just so incredible in what he was able to do with liberating Southern Africa and unifying East Africa. I think there's so much that I want to talk about when it comes to him. There's a script that I wrote about 8 years ago about World War I as it was fought in Tanzania. Because again, these are things that people are not aware of, that that even on our shores, we actually had battles in East Africa, and some of the graves are still there, and so the stories are still there, and so to find a way to kind of I'm really interested in history.
Yeah, great.
So I also want to do something epic and but told from our perspective of us being there in this war coming to our shores, and what that did to those areas, and it's actually the coast, and what that did to that coastal area. Yeah.
Well, the Portuguese actually, they fought their first battle in Africa, not in Europe.
Not in
for
Europe.
the First World War.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was tremendous. It involved so many thousands of people. Yeah.
And what does that look like for us, who the people who were there, when you're kind of like minding your own business and you go into your backyard and like this cannon just lands in your backyard when you're maybe trying to put up some laundry or some washing, and then to try and figure out, so what exactly is this war about, and how do we figure into this. So there's something that I wrote a while ago that I also want to kind of bring to fruition. Yeah.
Wow, great. I mean, I think it's very important also to really tell these stories. I mean, these historical stories. And Nyerere, I think even in Tanzania, he has become like a symbol.
Yeah.
But that also means that it kind of forecloses a kind of view on certain aspects and certain contributions he made.
And I think just to reveal the complexities, I think there's always an issue if you say, well, this leader was good.
Right.
Okay, well, he did a lot of good things,
but
you want to lay bare his humanity.
Yeah.
And so I'm really, really interested in doing that, but in mini-series form. So I'm going to try and fight for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all the best for all these interesting projects, and thank you so much for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.